Welcome to the Agile Software Engineering Deep Dive, the podcast where we unpack the ideas shaping modern software engineering. My name is Alessandro Guida, and I've spent most of my career building and leading software engineering teams across several industries. Today, I want to look at a question that is becoming surprisingly common. Who wrote this? More specifically, can we really tell whether a text was written by a human, assisted by AI, or generated by AI? In this episode, I take one original science fiction text, create 3 different versions of it, and test them with 5 AI detection services. The results are inconsistent enough to raise an important question about how much confidence we should place in these tools, especially when they are used in recruitment, education, publishing, and now regulation. We will also look briefly at how AI detectors work under the hood, and why the difference between AI-generated and AI-assisted content matters more than it may seem. Let's dive in.
You know, when we look at a forged painting, there are physical clues, like the age of the canvas, the chemical makeup of the paint, the specific brushstrokes.
Right, it's tangible. You are dealing with atoms.
Exactly. You can put a tiny flake of pigment under a microscope and say, like, right there, that is modern titanium white.
And that material literally did not exist in the 17th century.
Yeah, so the forgery is definitive. The physical evidence completely betrays it.
You have a ground truth you can uncover if you just have the right tools.
But then, you step into the world of writing today, and suddenly that microscope is completely useless.
Oh, absolutely useless.
We are just staring at a document, pixels on a screen, trying to answer what feels like the defining question of our era. Was this written by a human or by an AI?
It's the Wild West out there right now.
It really is. So we are exploring issue 44 of the Agile Software Engineering newsletter today, which dives into this exact problem.
We're going to see if AI detectors actually work.
Right. And before we get into the weeds, just a quick reminder for you, our listener. This deep dive is completely free, but it is a massive help to us if you press like, subscribe to receive all future issues, and forward this deep dive and the related article to your friends and colleagues.
It is genuinely the best way to support what we do.
It really is.
Hey.
Also, a quick heads up. The source today contains some pretty dense mathematical formulas for things like negative log probability.
Yeah, which we are absolutely not going to read aloud to you right now.
No, nobody wants to hear math equations on an audio show. Instead, we highly urge you to read and subscribe to the full article to see all the math, the illustrations, and the complete text of an original sci-fi story we are going to discuss today.
You really need to see the visuals in the story to get the full picture.
Definitely. So the author of the newsletter actually starts this whole discussion with a really fascinating philosophical provocation.
Yeah, the calculator analogy.
Right. If you think back 50 years, did anyone really care if an accountant used a calculator? I mean, so long as the math was right and the books balanced.
Nobody cared. The tool just helped them overcome the tedious parts of the profession so they could focus on, higher level analysis.
Exactly. So the author asks, why are we so obsessed with policing AI assistants in writing if the ideas themselves are solid?
That is such a great reframe. And what's fascinating here is how companies completely contradict themselves on this.
Oh, the job posting thing, right.
Yes. On one side, companies are actively demanding AI skills in their job postings. They want employees who can leverage these tools for efficiency.
They want you to be a prompt engineer.
Exactly. But on the other side of that exact same hiring process, they will outright reject an excellent cover letter if a third-party detector claims the applicant used AI to write it.
It makes no sense. It's just a glaring contradiction.
I think part of it stems from this enduring belief that you can, discover the real person hidden in the syntax of a cover letter.
Like using a language model somehow clouds your authenticity.
Right. But what this contradiction really forces us to look at is the policing mechanism itself.
The detectors.
Yeah. If universities and corporations are basing life-altering decisions like hiring or academic expulsions on these detectors, we have to understand what those tools are actually measuring.
Because if these organizations are using services like GPT-0 or Pangram, Originality.ai, Grammarly, and CopyLeaks, they are buying into a very specific experience.
It's a very seductive user interface.
It is. You paste in some text, you click a button, and you get a score.
A nice, neat little percentage.
Right. Seeing a result that says, 84% AI, it feels incredibly scientific. It feels like that microscope looking at the titanium white paint.
But the source is very clear that AI detection is fundamentally different from plagiarism checking.
Okay, let's unpack this,
Sure.
because this is where I think the general public gets totally tripped up.
Plagiarism checkers are essentially just search engines. They take a string of text and scan a massive database of published works, websites, academic papers, and they just look for a direct match.
Right, so it is a factual, word-for-word comparison.
Exactly. AI detectors cannot do that. They do not have a master database of every essay ChatGPT has ever generated.
We don't have access to OpenAI servers.
No, not at all. They have no idea what prompt a user typed in. They are not fact-checking a database. They are acting as statistical classifiers.
So when a tool spits out a score that says 60% AI, it is not saying that 6 out of 10 words in that specific document were written by a robot.
No, not at all. The source uses originality.a's own definition to clarify this exact misconception. That percentage is a confidence score in the tool's classification.
Wait, really? A confidence score?
Yeah, it basically means the model is 60% confident that the entire text falls into its AI-generated training category.
Wow, okay.
It's a measure of statistical probability, not a literal word count.
But then you have a tool like Grammarly, which the source says describes its results entirely differently.
Right. Grammarly actually attempts to isolate the percentage of the scanned text that appears generated.
And then CopyLeaks uses what they call an AI logic layer to explain how it categorizes different passages.
So putting all these percentages side by side on a spreadsheet to compare them is inherently misleading.
Right, because a 60% on originality is a confidence interval, while a 60% on another tool might represent the volume of flagged text.
They aren't even speaking the same language. They are measuring totally different statistical phenomena using different baseline definitions of what even constitutes artificial generation.
So if these tools are speaking different languages, how do they behave when forced to judge the exact same piece of writing?
Well, this is the best part of the newsletter.
Yeah, the author actually put this to the test by writing an original science fiction story.
The Aurora experiment.
Exactly. I'll give a brief summary, but again, you should absolutely check the full article to read all 3 versions of this great story.
It's genuinely a fun read.
It is. So it is about this mechanical engineer named George. He works at Mine 32 in Aurora, which is a private helium-3 extraction settlement on the moon run by MoonX, LLC.
Great world building right there.
Right. So George is doing his routine monitoring job when this massive excavation machine named Rose suddenly screams to a halt.
Because it hits something.
Yes, it hits a mysterious, unbreakable, completely smooth sphere buried deep in the lunar dust.
So the author generated 3 distinct versions of this premise just to see how the different detection algorithms would react.
Okay, let's break down the versions. Version A was the human baseline.
Right. It was written entirely by the author, and they only used AI to do very basic spelling and grammar correction.
Essentially just using it as a high-tech spell check.
Exactly. Then version B was AI-assisted.
So the human provided the plot, the characters, the sequence of events like the creative skeleton of the story, but the AI was prompted to heavily polish the prose.
It adjusted the rhythm and the atmosphere. It was a true collaboration where the human directed the narrative and the AI executed the drafting.
And finally, version C was a full AI rewrite.
The human just provided the basic premise about George and the sphere, but the AI freely invented all the dialogue, the world building, the pacing, and the suspense.
So we have a human version, a hybrid version, and a full AI version. The results of running these 3 versions through the 5 detectors are honestly shocking.
It highlights the fundamental unreliability of the whole technology.
CopyLeaks, for instance, rated all 3 versions as 100% human.
It missed the full AI rewrite entirely.
A document completely generated by an algorithm based on a single prompt was flagged as definitively human. How does that even happen?
Well, it tells us a lot about how CopyLeaks might be calibrated.
Oh.
In the world of classification models, you always have a trade-off between false positives and false negatives.
Meaning they'd rather let an AI slip through than falsely accuse a human.
Exactly. If a tool is heavily penalized by its users for falsely accusing humans of cheating, the developers might adjust the threshold so it only flags the most obvious robotic-sounding text.
So it just completely misses a highly creative AI prompt.
Precisely.
Then we have Grammarly, which found only 9% AI resemblance in both the assisted version and the fully AI written version.
It gave the exact same low score to two vastly different production methods.
Which is crazy.
But it makes sense if you think about it. Grammarly is primarily a structural and mechanical tool. It is looking at syntax.
So it couldn't distinguish between a human meticulously plotting out a story with AI prose assistance versus a full AI hallucination.
Right, because the sentence-level mechanics were similarly polished in both.
Wow. Meanwhile, Originality.ai called the pure human baseline only 68% human and flagged the AI-assisted version as 84% AI.
This perfectly illustrates how difficult that middle category is for a classifier. Where does editing stop and generation begin?
Yeah, if an AI changes the adjectives and tightens the pacing of a human's original plot, Originality's model shifts his confidence heavily toward the machine.
Even though the core ideas are entirely human.
And Pangram was perhaps the most fascinating failure of all. It caught the human baseline and the full AI extreme perfectly.
But it labeled the heavily AI-edited middle version B as 100% human.
It just completely ignored the heavy editorial hand of the AI in that specific text.
The only tool that accurately categorized all three in this specific test was GPT-0.
But the author is very careful to note that this does not prove GPT-0 is universally the best detector, right?
Exactly. It just means its specific training data and thresholds happen to align perfectly with the way this particular story was generated and edited.
So the real takeaway from this experiment is that these detectors aren't discovering a hidden truth embedded in the document.
Not at all. They're just applying their own specific filters to a text and reporting how it aligns with their internal mathematical models.
Okay, so what does this all mean for how these tools actually function under the hood?
Right.
Like, if they aren't finding hidden AI watermarks, what mathematical calculations are actually happening behind the scenes to generate these percentages?
It comes down to how large language models process text. They do not read words the way you and I do. They break text into what are called tokens.
And the token can be a whole word, a part of a word, or even just punctuation.
Yes. Detectors analyze the completed text by looking at next token probability.
Which basically means estimating how predictable a token is in a sequence.
Based on the massive data sets the models were trained on, yes.
Let's make that concrete for a second. If I start a sentence with, "The child opened the down door," the next token is highly likely to be door.
Right. There is a strong statistical probability there, say 32% likely.
But the probability of the next token being refrigerator is much lower, maybe 0.1%, and the probability of it being nebula is basically zero.
Exactly. So the detector runs these probability calculations throughout the entire document. It looks at the sequence of tokens and asks, if I were generating this text, what word would I pick next?
And if the words on the page consistently match the highly probable words the algorithm would have chosen, the text is considered to have low perplexity.
Perplexity being a measure of how perplexed or surprised the model is by the text.
Right, so a low perplexity score means the model is not surprised at all. The text is entirely predictable.
And early on, the assumption in the industry was that AI wrote with low perplexity because it is fundamentally a prediction engine.
It's just designed to pick the most statistically likely next word.
Right.
But I want to challenge that assumption because the author uses a great example that exposes the flaw in that logic.
Oh, the water freezing example.
Yes. Water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius.
That sentence is highly predictable.
It has incredibly low perplexity. But that doesn't mean a human didn't write it. It is just a direct scientific fact.
Right. We don't want scientists writing unpredictable facts.
Exactly. Conversely, the source gives this weird, beautiful sentence. The committee circled the proposal for an hour as though caution itself required walking shoes.
That is highly unpredictable. It has high perplexity.
But modern AI is totally capable of generating weird, surprising metaphors like that if you prompt it to be creative. And humans are entirely capable of writing boring, predictable sentences.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is exactly why detectors cannot rely on perplexity alone. A technical manual written by a human will have massive statistical overlap with a technical manual written by an AI.
So they have to look at other metrics.
Right. This is why detectors also look at a metric called burstiness.
Burstiness.
Yeah, it measures the variance in sentence length and syntactic structure throughout a document.
Ah, okay. So a human might write a long, flowing, complex sentence with multiple clauses, followed by a tiny fragment.
A sudden stop. We vary our rhythm naturally.
And early AI text generation lacked that variance.
It was monotonously smooth and uniform. The sentence lengths were mathematically similar.
So detectors use this lack of burstiness as a key signal.
But today, modern AI can easily fake burstiness if given the right prompt. You can just tell a model to vary its sentence length and mimic a conversational tone.
Furthermore, a human professional writing, say a corporate press release, might intentionally write in a very smooth, uniform, unbursty tone.
Exactly. To really solidify why this is all just an estimation, the author uses this fantastic piano analogy.
Oh, this is brilliant.
It really is. Detecting AI is like listening to an audio recording of a piano performance. You can listen to the recording, you can analyze the chords, the rhythm, the tempo, and the acoustics.
And based on all that data, you can form a very educated opinion on whether a human virtuoso played the piece or a player piano algorithm generated it.
But you do not have the original sheet music. You do not have a video of the pianist's hands. You are analyzing the byproduct of the creation, not the creation itself.
The detector is just creating its own representation of the final text and analyzing how statistically typical it appears against its training data.
It does not know who actually typed the words, just like the audio analyzer doesn't know who pressed the keys. It's an estimate, not time travel.
But when an educated guess, based on statistical typicality, is treated as forensic proof, it creates massive real-world problems.
Huge problems.
One of the critical findings mentioned in the source is that detectors disproportionately misclassify writing by non-native English speakers.
This is a documented analytical failure of these classification models.
Because their vocabulary might be narrower.
Exactly. A non-native speaker might rely on a more standardized vocabulary. They might not use the highly unpredictable idioms or the complex syntactic burstiness of a native speaker.
And the simplistic detector systems interpret that statistical predictability as being AI-like.
Right. So if a hiring manager rejects a job applicant based on a detector score,
they are effectively penalizing an applicant for having a highly efficient, predictable vocabulary.
Or worse, they are penalizing them for using a language model exactly the way it was intended, as an accessibility tool to help them level the playing field.
It creates a scenario where the policing tool actively works against accessibility.
And this messiness is bleeding into the legal realm as well. The source mentions the August 2026 update regarding the EU AI Act.
Oh, right, the legislation that demands transparency for AI-generated content. It requires clear labeling when artificial systems produce text.
The intent there is completely understandable. People want to know if they are reading a deepfake or a fully automated hallucination.
Sure, but the source points out the immense danger of blurring the lines in how these transparency rules are enforced.
Because there is a massive functional gulf between AI-generated and AI-assisted.
Right. AI-generated is when a user pushes a button and the machine writes an entire article with zero human thought behind the premise.
But AI-assisted is when a user does the hard work of thinking, structuring an argument, and writing a draft, but uses AI as a high-tech editor.
To fix commas or translate phrasing or tighten up a paragraph.
If laws or corporate policies treat those two things as identical offenses, relying on faulty detectors to enforce the rule, we risk discouraging a legitimate tool.
We end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater because our mathematical microscopes cannot tell the difference between a high-tech spell check and a robotic ghostwriter.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean for us?
The
ultimate synthesis of this deep dive is that the tool used to write a document does not determine its value. The result does.
AI can produce terrible writing, and humans can produce terrible writing.
We have all endured terrible emails written entirely by human fingers.
Oh, absolutely.
The real questions we should be asking aren't about the statistical presence of a language model. We should be asking, is the content actually good? Is the information truthful?
Does the author understand and stand behind the ideas they are presenting to the world?
Did the technology improve the communication of a genuinely human idea? Or did it replace human thought with plausible-sounding emptiness?
That distinction matters far more than the perplexity score of the syntax. And this raises a really provocative question for you to think about.
Yeah, let's hear it.
As AI language models continue to evolve, they are constantly ingesting vast amounts of human data, right?
Right.
They are mathematically learning to perfectly mimic human burstiness and human perplexity.
They are mapping all of our inconsistencies.
They are. So eventually, the statistical overlap between human writing and machine writing will become a perfect circle.
Wow.
When an AI can perfectly mathematically replicate the flaws, the sudden stops, and the erratic rhythms of human emotion, will human writing just become a state of mind rather than a measurable, detectable fact?
That is wild to think about.
Yeah.
If there is no statistical difference left to measure, then the microscope is permanently broken.
We are back at that forged painting, but the paint is identical down to the very atoms.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Well, before you go, if you want to explore the actual math behind negative log probability, or if you want to read the full 3-part sci-fi story about George and the mysterious sphere on the moon, remember to read and subscribe to the full article.
You really don't want to miss that story.
You don't. And please press like, subscribe to this deep dive, and forward this to a friend who is obsessed with or maybe terrified of AI.
It really helps keep this show free.
It does. Until next time, keep learning.
Thank you for listening to the Agile Engineering Deep Dive podcast. If you found this episode valuable, feel free to share it with someone who might benefit. A colleague, your team, or your network. You can access all episodes by subscribing to the podcast and find their written counterparts in the Agile Software Engineering newsletter on LinkedIn. And if you have thoughts, ideas, or stories from your own engineering journey, I'd love to hear from you. Your input helps shape what we explore next. Thanks again for tuning in, and see you in the next episode.